Get Set Green, where we explore the systems and people ensuring sustainability moves from policy to practice. Today's episode focuses on how environmental laws are actually implemented and enforced on the ground. Joining us is Parmjit Singh Surjewala, Deputy District Attorney with the Haryana Government and Law Officer at the Haryana State Pollution Control Board. With over 26 years of legal experience working closely on implementation, compliance, and enforcement of environmental regulations. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Pooja, for inviting me. It's a rather pleasure to be a part of Get Set Green, and I'm trying to sharing my view on the environmental law and governance in India, but my view are restrictedly such in my personal capacity rather. I will try to keep the discussion simple and practical. So may proceed, please.
Yeah. We are honored with your presence today, and thank you so much for sharing your personal perspective in terms of how environmental law is evolving and what is the ground reality today. Thank you so much for that. And without further ado, I would start with the first question, which is from a legal standpoint, how aware are industries and citizens about environmental laws, and how does this impact compliance and as well as enforcement on the ground?
Yeah, Pooja, your question is very good. Rather, we need to discuss about the awareness and its impact on compliances. So long as I think. So, if we see from a legal point of view, awareness is improving rather day by day with the passage of time, but still not uniform. As it is commonly seen, everybody is observing that large industries are generally more aware because Puja, they have a proper system, some kind of things to comply with law like the Water Prevention Control of Pollution Act, Air Prevention Control of Environment Protection. These three are the major environmental laws which need to be followed by the industrialist as well as all the actually क्योंकि boards are supposed to do mainly in the work water and air acts, and environmental act is a umbrella kind of things. It's a mainly is governed under the directions of the Union of India central government, Ministry of Environment, and all the pollution control boards as well as the CPCB and the state authorities are supposed to do work under the environmental laws, the power delegated by the central governments. So, in such,
Okay.
because in implementation level, we state pollution boards are there. So, in case of a larger industry, they are more aware about that because they have some proper system to comply with the law. They have a first-hand knowledge and they are supposed to financially sound and to get some services of the consultant of the real industry. In case of small industry and general public, I would like to say that awareness is still limited. Many people are not fully aware of what kind of approval they need, what standard they need to follow, what consequences arises, and so or in such things. Because of this, usually violations happen. But we can say that violations happen not on they violation not they're not committed violation deliberately,
Yeah,
unintentionally,
got it.
inadvertently it's happened only
Mm-hmm.
due to lack of understanding. So, however, some in the recent past, there is a one major change has been done in the environmental laws by through the Jan Viswas Amendment Acts, Air Act and Environment Acts has been amended, and with the
Okay.
object of ease of doing business, and Water Act has been amended separately because water is a state subject and it is Parliament or central government is not empowered to amend that without the consent of the state. But whatever it may be, all the three laws have been amended and now it has been followed all over the India. And what is the substantial change of the amendments? Digitally,
Yeah.
the approach of regulations have been changed substantially. It has
Okay.
decriminalized many minor offenses, replaced imprisonment with monetary penalties. Earlier, even small procedural mistake could lead to criminal cases earlier before the amendment. But
Okay.
now the approach is more practical. And this support ease of doing business. At the same time, it puts more responsibility on individual and industry to comply properly. So overall, but the question is main, awareness become even more important now, because whatever may be the scene scenario, because the system is moving towards trust based compliance, but without awareness still there is a difficulty with the small industry as well as in the ground of the uh, public.
Yeah, very well said, sir. In terms of understanding, let's say, because environmental concepts, in particular to air, water pollutions, usually it involves scientific understanding of it, whether how the refluent treatment of the water should be done, whether what is the, let's say, the compounding of biological oxygen demand, or what is the chemical oxygen demand. All these terminologies usually needs a technically sound person to understand and as well as to comply with. So this also brings us to the topic, right? Like, what is the amount of resource available with in terms of the demand for this particular industry. I feel like this is also pointing towards increased, let's say, scope for environmental engineers and more people in environmental science to scatter to this broader requirement, rather say demand from industry as well as government level of implementations. And I was also curious when you mentioned about this implementation part, right? You mentioned the word deliberately they are not doing. This can be case scenario for majority of the industries, especially who might fall into this medium MSMEs, right? So for MSMEs often struggle with environmental regulations. What are the most common legal or compliance challenges you see them facing during the implementation?
Yeah, very genuine, Pooja. Your observation is so sharp about that. MSME face genuine challenge. As in case of MSME, there is a problem is not willingness. It is about handling the system. The legal requirement are multiple and technicals, as you say, is ki biological, such as technical terms you have used in the discussion. So, in the case of MSME, there is a need of understanding of the consent, authorization, standards to be meet out by them in reference to the to be provided by the regulator authorities, pollution board, or so other authorities. All this can be difficult for the MSME. Secondly,
Yeah.
procedural issues are there. Even though online system have been improved from the last 5 6 year, compliance still requires time and efforts. And third, there is a lack of some kind of, we can say, financial constraints, technical constraints with the MSME. Because MSME installing pollution control system is not always easy for small units. It is
Yeah.
commonly observed by us. Now, we need to say that recent reforms, again, I want to repeat at the cost of Jan Biswas Act, there is so many changes that try to reduce this burden by,
Okay.
by, by, by the way of converting minor violation are no longer criminal side, because being on a legally I know much about that. And
Mm-hmm.
penalties are more proportionate after the amendments, recent amendment, and there is a provision for adjudication instead of prosecution, right, in
Okay.
90% of the cases, until unless they are totally running their industry uh, out of the loop of the regulatory authority. So for minor violations, now they are no longer liable for the criminal prosecutions. So
Right.
after such amendments under the Environment Protection Act, you can say that imprisonment provision for certain violation have been replaced with financial penalties. Now it
So,
is
could
totally
you
changed.
give us, let's say, rough figures like what was the earlier fee or penalty which was laid and
Uh,
to versus the
earlier,
existing
early,
numbers? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Earlier, there was a scene before in the Air Act. If it says ki Environment Act, that Environment Protection Act. If it says the first, I would like to say, in Environment Protection Act, there was a provision of criminal prosecution and imprisonment of extendable up to 6 years.
Okay. Six
Yeah,
years.
6 years by violation of any order, any directions, any notifications issued under the environment. There is a one only section 15 was there, but now the whole thing is has been decriminalized. Total
Okay.
in say of the in Environment Protection Act, totally it is decriminalized now. in case of violation of the any order direction issued under the Environment Act and all the rules frames under the Environment Protection Act, all the solid waste management, biomedical waste management, hazardous waste management, other the plastic waste management, there are number of e-batteries rules. In any kind of violations, the concerned is liable for imposition of the penalties, and that penalty is to be imposed by the adjudicating authority. Is quasi judicial kind of things is there, not as a strict of the legal sense is there, legal things are there. And there is a variation of the penalty according to degradation to be proved by the authorities, and it is from up to 10,000, 15,000 to 15 lakhs.
Okay.
There is a window for the adjudicating authority. The same has been in the same is there in Water Act as well as in the Air Act, but still there is a one provision: if any industry is established and operated without having any consent, prior consent, or in a layman language we can say, if anybody is running their industry without getting any permission, then that
Permit to
is,
operate
yeah,
from
then
the
that is still,
CPCB.
that fellow is still liable for the prosecution. In other
Okay.
case, if he is running the industry with the permission and during the operation some minor violations has happened out there, as earlier I says that some minor violations are some kind of uh, uh, is not aware about that, or it happens, then he is liable for penalty. He is not liable for then. Now, keeping in view of the ease of doing business, that this kind of change is done by the through Jan Viswas Amendment Act.
Thanks a lot for explaining lucidly in terms of how the jurisdiction of having a permit to operate will change the case scenario. Because when you have a legal and good intention of following the rules, and let's say you got deviated because of whatsoever reason in certain parameters or aspects which has to be met by according to the standards of CPCB or SPCB, there can be a case scenario where you cannot be let's say punished with the harsher criminal laws, but rather go with much more softer implications on that. But it is altogether a different scenario when the industry is being operated without an actual license. So these are two phases of how the original intention is what matters at the end. If that is what I was trying to summarize in this case. And you also mentioned about digitalization of this whole process, right, where many of the procedures have been taken into online platforms and portals. Could you please give us a, let's say, an understanding, if someone has to compare what was there earlier and what is the update, or much more better version of the system available right now?
Uh, Now we can say from the last many years, there is a focus of the regulatory as well as the government authorities that they are trying to aware the all the concerned stakeholders to install the online monitoring systems to the things which supposed to be connected with the central systems, and so that the regulatory authorities get the all the readings and the AQI in the sense ki, and otherwise in case of the affluent discharge in the water bodies and the rivers and all these things. So they are trying to get into the loop of all the stakeholder, all the industrialists, all the government even authorities which are operating, running and looking after the sewage treatment plant, common treatment plants. So with the object that if such kind of things are happening the practically, then it helps to the government and the regulators to frame out the policies appropriately, in appropriate sense ki how much discharge is there, how much AQI is there. After getting such kind of information, it is good for the regulatory, and it is also good for the concerned industries rather than to get. This is a one thing. The second thing is almost in all of throughout India, so long as I think, as it is learned, that now the industrialists need not to visit the office of the regulator. They have to
Mhm.
connect online through all the things. They have to apply all the things on the portal. they got the permission, they supposed to submit the fees and all the things. Everything is going in through the portals. So such kind of things have been changing with the passage of time, revolutionary with the revolutionary way from the last 6 7 years. And
Okay.
it seems that now, in other kind of things, we say that now there is they are trying to track even the solid waste management for stations, how much waste have been processed and all these things. You have to update the things on the municipal corporation authorities supposed to update the things to the regulators, how much had been processed in this. Everything is going with this.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing in the point of solid waste management rules, right? As we know, it came in 2016 with a lot of efforts from various different sector people who are working towards this, so that they can streamline the whole process of how we manage waste as a country. Could you share some recent developments to the changes of the act, or in terms of how they are being implemented at the ground level, sir?
Yeah, there is a lot of development since the time the rules commence, and it is well known to all that solid waste management has been major improvement after the solid waste management rules come into the
Yeah.
force in 2016. So, as you aware, so but more important than earlier, we have discussed about the awareness. Now there is number of changes are there. Swachh Bharat initiative, especially under the such under such is this na. So one very visible improvement in this connection is that it is commonly seen by everybody is that collection of waste from door to door collection of waste. Now it is
Yeah.
common practice in the suburb, even says district headquarters and subdivision levels, wherever be the municipal authorities are there. Although villages are not following this such kind of practice right now, it is not there. Except this, their own level. Government initiatives are little behind out there. Although with the passage of time, it can be exposed. But otherwise, and earlier it was since ki water used to be dumped at common waste. Sorry, waste used to be dumped at a common site, but now it is to be picked by the authorities from the door to door. And there are other kind of things. Collection vehicles go house to house. Waste segregation is increasing at source.
Yeah.
Earlier, it was this concept was not there. Waste segregation. Now it is the common knowledge of every household in all the major cities. Every household, every person know that you have to keep two dustbin,
Yeah.
wet as well as dry waste are there. It is a so long as I think it is a big change in the last 10 year. It can be observed, and this is a big shift we says in the point of the governance also, from passive collection to active collection. Legally also responsibility is now shared by the local bodies, bulk waste generator, citizens, and the focus is on the segregation at source,
Hmm.
scientific processing after the collection by the authority,
Correct.
reducing landfill dependency.
Hmm.
So we see as a good example where law plus policy plus public participation are working together, then definitely and the practically some major changes will be there.
Yeah, and I also like the concept where the waste collection became a big trend in India, because as an environmental engineer myself, I can say the major drawback in terms of recycling, or even extracting the minerals from various other waste materials, or let's say going sending it for the composting purpose as well. The key factor here is always segregation, because the more segregated the waste is, the better use case after the end of life. So keeping that in mind, I also urge the person listening to make conscious effort in terms of segregating waste, whether it is something packaged food, or let's say you are bringing few other aspects of vegetables or fruits in other packaging stuff. If you can make a conscious effort in terms of segregating those waste, it goes in a long way. As we already discussed, the amount of land and the percentage of land available for land filling is limited, and also it poses different problems for people as well as the nearby ecosystems. And yeah, maybe I wanted to take a moment to emphasize more on that. So could you also share some of the recent developments, you can see the understanding or the let's say the implementation level, the biggest gaps between environmental laws on paper and their actual enforcement?
It's a very good question, Pooja. As in light of the discussion we have already held, so it is an important thing to know that undoubtedly India has a strong environmental laws. We know that
Yeah.
legislation have privilege and judicial has evolved. So many things are there in respect to the environmental law, and it is a commonly known by everybody that environment compensation are imposed by the things. So framework is quite comprehensive. Environmental laws, in respect of the environmental law, the concern is liable for the civil side as well the criminal side, and regulator is there properly. Environmental engineers are there in the if I say that there is a more focus on it is a common environmental nobody knows about 20 year ago nobody knows about the environmental engineers. Now it is a commonly known that you have to study the environmental things. It is a major important fields gain the momentum, but the gaps is still there in the implementation. In respect to that, one issue is capacity constraint. Monitoring a large number of activities is not easy because we are the know that we our country is populous and about that in both aspects. So second is a fast urbanization and industrial growth. And from the last several 2 3 decades, we have been observing there is a urbanization is keeping so fast, and industrial growth is also getting that. Sometimes faster than regulatory systems, we can say. So, in if we evaluate all the things, then there is a one another aspect is there. That is a compliance are taken as a behavior. If we take in respect of that, if compliance is seen as a burden, enforcement become difficult.
Yeah.
So now, although it again, I want to repeat it that through Jan Viswas Act, major changes has been implemented. I would like to say that after the Jan Viswas Act, the things have been changed in regard to the punishments for the violations. But still, there is a gap in different way because we need to focus on the trust-based regulations, monetary penalties instead of criminal action for minor lapses, adjudication instead of lengthy prosecution. This reduce fear and encourage voluntary compliance. If we want to fill up the gaps, then we need to make the people more aware. We need to encourage the public. We need to encourage the industrialists, either be small or larger industries, MSME or be the small scale industry. We need to encourage everybody. We need to make aware everybody that what is the pros and cons of the pollution you have committed. Then that is a most important way to fill the gaps. Otherwise, by you cannot, matlab, you need to carry carrot and a stick in both hands.
Yeah.
There are so
And
many gaps are there, and serious violations still need strict enforcement. So you cannot leave behind your stick for the industrialist, and
got
you
it.
have to maintain the balance of ease of doing business, but not at the cost of environmental protection. And
Yeah.
so we have to move on those with a balance approach, practical approach to fill up the gaps.
Yeah. And we need to find this balance because as you were talking about, it should come from more voluntary basis, and if we look at these compliance regulatory requirements as a burden, then that is a different aspect. But rather, if we can see it as a positive impact wherein you can also sustain business, because right now the trending topic is ESG, where we are already focusing on environmental, social and governance, because all these three aspects are much much required. And for a country like India, where we have such a big population to feed, it is all the more important for us to manage the economic aspects of it as well as along with environmental aspects. So, which is a key to maintain to this balance, of course, along with the support from governance as well. And thank you so much, sir, for spending your time and helping us understand this better. I have one very last question for you before we end this. With all your experience of 26 years being in the forefront of legal field, could you share three insights for us?
Uh, Yeah, Pooja. That's as per our discussion, and before concluding, before parting, that's. I would like to say that environmental law in India is in evolving stage and stages. Earlier, the approach was more strict and punitive. Now it is becoming more balanced and practical. After the amendment through the Jan Viswas Act, the system is moving toward ease of doing business, trust-based compliance, simplified procedures. At the same time, for hill stations or the repetition initiative like door-to-door waste collections, so that real change happens when law is supported by implementation public participation. So overall, it can be said that environmental protection is not only about law, it is about awareness, responsibility, and collective efforts. So
Yeah.
at the last, thank you, it was a meaningful discussion for me. Thanks for.
Thank you so much. So, thanks, Attorney Parmjit, for helping us understand how environmental laws are implemented beyond policy frameworks. This episode also highlights the real change depends not just on laws, but on how effectively they are enforced and people's willingness to be follow this rather not see it as a burden in terms of understanding environmental laws. And this is Gets It Green. Stay tuned for more conversation shaping sustainable systems. At the end, I have one genuine request to the person listening to this. Please go and read the content available on CPCB and SPCB portal so you are more aware and you have the enough capacity of knowledge to understand this. And also, in case of requirement, you can reach out to the respective persons or take help from the legal or CPCB technical aspects also. So that was one kind request from my side. That's it for today's episode of Get Set Green. I'm your host Pooja Arve. Thank you for tuning in to the conversations that matter. If this story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, subscribe, and join our community of change makers. Together, let's keep purpose meeting planet one week and one story at a time. Until next time, stay curious, stay foolish, and let's get set to get green.